More importantly, in the same part that government contended that the road was passing, one is now seen just before Makkah, the construction of a fence encompassing lands that are in line with the lands from which the residents of Makkah were evicted. The government must be careful and not continue down this vindictive and discriminatory path. In addition, residents in Sophia contend that many of the street lights are not functioning and the area is extremely dark at night. And notwithstanding their complaints, nothing is being done. Residents also complain that a PPP activist in the area violates the law, burn garbage, and affect the residents, and then states clearly that the police cannot do her anything. Residents also stated that when they make complaints, the police refuse to act. However, once the PPP activist complains, the police harass the community. Residents are calling on the government to ensure that the police maintain law and order in a professional and fair manner. Residents also inform the visiting team that they get little or no water, and when they do get it is brown and clearly not suitable for human consumption. Residents are calling on the government to ensure that they have access to potable water.
Good morning. PPP government continues to ignore the plight of Guyanese facing monetary and food poverty. It is now over 3 months since the passage of Budget 2024, and the government has remained mum with regards to the disbursement of the $7 billion approved for cost of living relief. The Guyanese people are no longer surprised by the PPP government's heartless attitude towards alleviating the burdens and struggles of daily existence in Guyana. The government is clearly more interested in doling out funds to its cronies for contracts awarded illegally and corruptly than giving the workers of Guyana a living wage. We should recall that in the previous 2 budgets, the government had to be relentlessly pressured to disburse the funds for cost of living relief. When it did, it waited until the very end of the year to play PPP-style Santa Claus politics. Meanwhile, workers in Guyana continue to live in poverty. Most likely, it intends to do the same this year. As the Guyanese people continue to experience monetary and food poverty, the government will wait until December to pay out the $7 billion through the imposition of meager salary increases and bonuses to public servants and the granting of tokens elsewhere. It is so typical of the callousness of Bayard Jagdeo and the PPP government to believe that these meager payments can somehow compensate for 12 months of hardships and sufferings. So typical of them to believe that blowing their own trumpets can substitute for genuine policies to raise living standards of ordinary Guyanese. By the time the government is ready to pay, workers will need at least 100% increase in wages and salaries to survive. We note that Arafan Ali is reported as promising public servants the best welfare package by 2030. When in opposition, he had pledged these benefits by 2020. Then he later said by 2025. Just 2 weeks ago, he moved his promised deadline to 2027. Now the deadline is by 2030. In the next few months, he will likely promise by 2040. Such is the deceit. Such is the disdain for workers and other common Guyanese that this government harbors. While manifesting an unwillingness to pay Guyanese workers a living wage, it is doling out to friends, families, and favorites contracts to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. How is it you can ask workers who lack the means to feed their families to wait until 2030, while giving those who have the means to live billions of dollars? However, Guyanese have recourse other than to bank on these false pledges and promises. We in the APNU commit to implementing a people-centered vision of development that puts people first, beginning from our first 100 days in government. We, as the next government, will ensure our country's oil wealth gets directly to the people through significant increases in salaries, pensions, cash transfers, the tax-free threshold, cost of living relief, job creation, investment opportunities, and small business grants and soft loans. Over 200,000 Guyanese households will benefit in our drive to guarantee every family a living income and a high quality of life. We're talking here not only about public servants, but also about workers in the private sector, the self employed, and job seekers. So the Guyanese people can tell Irfan Ali to put his 2030 offer where the sun doesn't shine. Guyanese don't intend to wait until 2030 nor 2027. They are tired of waiting. They will vote to change their lives for the better in the next elections. PPP shows its true colors at its party Congress. The PPP's recently concluded Congress has thoroughly besmirched the rosy image it has eagerly attempted to paint. Last weekend, it demonstrated that not only is it unfit to govern Guyana, it has no interest in meaningful change or reform. Whereas the president crows about protecting women with his useless Men on a Mission project, his party has chosen to elevate multiple rape and sexual assault accused Nigel Darmalal to not only the Central Committee, but the governing executive committee. That he has been elevated above nearly all the PUP's members shows the scant regard that that party has for women's rights and people's safety. In fact, some of his accusers have reached out to us to register their pain, renewed trauma, and utter disgust with any PUP delegates supportive of him. It is either that the powers that be in the PUP have positioned him as the sixth most popular member of the Central Committee, or that he really is nearly as popular as the president. Both these prospects are awful, but sadly, each indicates Guyanese women cannot look forward to a future free from sexual violence, abuse, misogyny, and disrespect under the PUP. When the national budget was debated earlier this year, PUP MPs even openly called for Damlal to be returned to that house. Given such an ugly attitude, reinforced by this Congress, no one should be surprised if the PUP attempts to reinstate him. On the other hand, the PUP has once again demonstrated that it sees Afro Guyanese as nothing more than tokens. Only two Afro Guyanese now rank among the PUP's Central Committee members, whether by design or election. Two voices among 35. Even if they were inclined to advocating for the rights of Afro Guyanese, which we doubt, would be nowhere near enough to represent the over 30% of Guyana's population that is of African descent. Similarly, 5 Afro Guyanese ministers have been passed over, as sure an indication as any that they have no real power or influence. If this weren't bad enough, what kind of a signal is the PUP sending young Guyanese when its executive committee consists of almost exactly the same personnel as after the last party congress all the way back in 2017? It appears that virtually the only way for a young person to break into that party's leadership is through the death of a more senior member. This contrasts with the PNCR, which has a young chairman, vice chairman, economic advisor, and a long list of Central Executive Committee members and MPs who are under the age of 40. The PUP preaches inclusivity, respect for women, and youth engagement day in and day out. The evidence suggests this is a lie. They had every opportunity to remove Darmalal from their ranks, but they have elevated him. They had every opportunity to empower Afro Guyanese ministers and party members, but they have undermined them. They had every opportunity to encourage and uplift young people, but the same old faces have returned. Voters see the PUP for what they are and cannot wait to remove them from office come 2025. Thank you.
This time, I will take questions on the press. If Ms. Williams, who is in.
Yes, sorry. A very good morning to all.
Good morning, Adam.
The focus on the PPP Congress and the reaction to some of the appointments. My question is, why should we focus on the PPP Congress, bearing in mind that throughout the year and years, we have been saying that the PPP is what it is. Why should we care what they do at their Congress? We should worry about what they do on the national scale.
Okay, I agree with you in part, but I must state this. The PPP, in the presentations of both Barajak Leo and Irfan Ali, they try to paint the impression that they are the most multi-ethnic party in the country. And we thought that that should not pass because the evidence suggests that a mere 7.5% of the PPP executive is of Afro-Guyanese descent, compared to the PNC, in which of 19 members, 21% are Indo-Guyanese. And so the sole purpose is to point out to the people of Guyana that do not worry with what the PPP says. Look at what actually happens. And when you look at that, you will see that the claim to being a multi-ethnic party is not true. The second reason why I think we needed to address it is you had this situation with Dharamlal, which the society was outraged about. And you see, rather than ensuring he faces the law, the PPP is seeking to rehabilitate him. And we thought, while these matters occurred at the Congress, they were enough of national significance that they should be highlighted.
I would also say, Adam, that we have to keep in mind that there are a lot of young people who have not really interacted that much with PPP over the years and are now kind of learning a bit about what's going on in Guyanese politics. And they, I can tell you, have been following closely what happened with Damlal, and a lot of them have been expressing concern to us. And of course, that issue, the PPP tried to make that issue die down. Now, what you've seen is Damlal emerge again. And so we need to ensure that we spread the word. We need to ensure that we inform the Guyanese population as to what is going on, and so that some of those same young people who may be forming their opinions can really see the evidence before them as to the PPP's attitude when it comes to such matters. We want to tear down this false image that the PPP is trying to put out, that they're in favor of women's rights, that they care about women's safety, and really highlight that when it comes down to it, they not only will they not put aside members who have many allegations against them, they will in fact elevate them. And so those types of things need to be highlighted to young people. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is something I want to point out as a young Guyanese. Really, when you look at what's going on with the executive committee of the PPP, the fact that there's almost no change over a prolonged period of time, as far as I have known myself, it feels to me like it's been pretty much the same people that have been running the PPP. I could barely recall anybody other than this particular group for all these years. And so we also need to highlight to young people that when the PPP talks about bringing young people in and inclusivity, that is all a joke. Really, what we have seen in the PNCR, which is one of the reasons that I am staunchly proud to be a member of the PNCR, is that the party listens to young people, brings them in, and works along with them, not just treats them as tokens. What you're seeing in the PPP is classic tokenism, where people have no voice, and the real power is concentrated in the same few people that it has been from time immemorial.
Brings us to another question. At the Congress, Oral Post-Congress event, Vice President Jagdeo spoke about developing the youth arm of the party, BYO, so that there could be 5,000 BYO members. NCR as the GYSM, Guyana Youth and Students Movement. On that organization to encourage the young people, and therefore distract them from going to this organization that Jagdeo wants to boost by 5%.
We have been working with the GYSM. We'll continue to work with the GYSM and bring it to the point where it will have its Congress and elect its leadership. We are heavily focused on the youth. We are not guided by what Jack Leo does. But we have been from the inception, at least of my leadership, working, and we have a number of YSM groups around the country, and we continue GYSM.
Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. I want to bring you back to the criticisms that you made concerning youths, Mr. Lowe, the criticisms with youths and the PPP. However, within the previous cabinet of the AP and AFC, there were not that many young people. My question is, since you're all about youth empowerment and so forth, why were youths not a focal point for your cabinet? That's number one. Number two, what are your plans to prioritize youths? I know that you mentioned that there are youth groups and so forth, but with Congress coming up, what are your plans to have them integrated in this?
Well, first of all, let me say that the youths are integrated into the party's leadership. You would recall at the last Congress, I campaigned with a team of young people. Virtually all of the principal officers outside of myself were below 40 years of age. Some people said that I was taking risks, etc. But we have a lot of young people. Our last executive had young people. I'm not in this business of looking at what happened while we were in government. When you were in government, you have to assess what occurred when you were in government, plan for the future. And in our plans for the future, youths are all around to be seen. If you look at the city council, we placed a lot of young people. If you look at the NDC, since I am leader the party, we've placed a lot of young people. So we are focusing on youth, and there are a lot of young people who are being exposed. I challenge the PPP to do what I do. We take Sherwin Holder, in Troy Jordan, Elson Lowe, and say, engage the press, which constitutes a form of training and exposure. The PPP has one person that could talk, Barry Jack Dale, even if he's talking garbage. He has run out of things now that he's talking about who could dance and who can't dance. You know, I mean, there are serious national issues to be addressed in all sectors, but you are worried about who could dance. And mind you, these are the same persons when I became leader and was dancing at an activity, went on as if dancing was a crime. Now they have a man who has no understanding of rhythm and coming on about dancing. We don't have time for that nonsense. What needs to be focused on are the critical issues in the development of the people of Ghana, getting our people out of poverty, reducing the cost of living, managing the oil sector in a way that the people of Ghana benefit. Those are the issues of concern. And we have been exposing youth across the party and across the country to ensure that there is a place for youth. And by the time we arrive at government, they have the exposure. I want to also make a point. You know, I think Barajagdo has me in his head. It's unfortunate because he really should have a brain. But since he has me in his head, and he makes a stupid comment like Norton did not run anything in government, which totally untrue. I ran a number of institutions, including bringing back the Cultural Labor College to a viable position while I was there. But here is a man who, when he became a minister, and everybody that becomes a minister, the first time they will have no experience as a minister. So it is idiocy at its summit for him to be speaking about people not having experience in government. He had none. When he came from Jamaica, he came on a bicycle. And the experience he seems to have accumulated most is to get rich. So I don't know how relevant is this lack of experience. Everybody that will become a president in this country or a prime minister, including Burnham and Jackman, they had no experience in governing. They had to learn on the job. we are in a much better position because we have had experience. I've had when I became presidential advisor, I had far more experience than Mar Jagdeo had in his life. So let us not worry with this idle chap. He finds himself in a position where he cannot debate intellectually. And since he cannot take you on intellectually, he descends into trivialities. I think he should be ignored.
I want to also follow up with this remark. Now, really, some folks may remember me from the Free University of Guyana movement, where I had engaged the previous government and gotten a commitment to making the University of Guyana free. So really, I think that was one indication that young people did have a voice, and I engaged several ministers. We didn't always agree, but in the end, those were some of the positions that I think were really important positions that were taken, and an understanding of the importance of making University of Guyana free was communicated. That's the first thing I would say. The second is on the matter of Orphan Alley dancing. Yesterday we saw a couple of military jets that were passing over Guyana. It was, I think, a timely reminder of the seriousness of the situation that we're in. I find it personally very difficult to take the president seriously. And it is important that we highlight that the president is not only dealing with Guyanese, he has to deal with other world leaders. It is a classic trope of foreign relations that leaders who don't manage their image can often put themselves in situations where the people are looking to try them out to see how far they can push them. And so I must admit a certain degree of anxiety as to how Maduro views the president when he sees him carrying on in that fashion. And of course, we've seen many provocations from Venezuela. So that's one thing. And the last thing on the issue of experience and Jagdeo, one of the things that is to me quite fascinating is that Bar Jagdeo seems to make some mistakes and that you would think he would have worked out, but he still has, it shows off his own level of inexperience. Recently, at the last presser, there was an issue regarding the 4 million versus 12 billion increase, or rather inflation of price, alleged inflation of price with the GRA. And you're now hearing Jagdeo say they're going to support the GRA, which I can understand. But there's something that we really need to make clear here. He chose to attack me over saying that that was 12 million and not 12 billion, which, I can admit that error. But to me, what is being missed here is that a $12 billion error is something that you'll catch. A $12 million versus $4 million error is much more difficult to catch. And therefore, that to me is the type of thing that we have to be really tight on. And if you add that up, that's going to be huge losses over the course of the life of the oil industry. I know that because I have worked with tens of billions of US over the course of my professional life. But has he been working with those types of dollars? So it's almost as if he thinks that what is a risk is not what really is a risk. The real risk is the small amounts that you have trouble monitoring that add up to huge amounts. And that shows that he lacks experience, or he's trying to pretend that he has any interest in accountability when he does not in these types of matters.
Coming back to you, Mr. Lowe, you criticizing President Ali for dancing at the party congress. Do you believe that dancing or any other clean social activities are beyond that of a president?
No, we believe that all human beings need to dance. We believe that human beings have the relax. Mind you, it is the PPP that made dancing an issue, starting with me. But then, if you are going to dance, at minimum, you must have the rhythm. What a lot of people are concerned with is that he comes over as comical. And when people who know how Michael Jackson actually did his dance saw what he was doing, it will come off as one of the idiocies of the century. And so no one is up against dancing. One is up against somebody making themselves a fool. That's what the issue is.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to ask any question about dancing. Sorry about that. But I have a question, Mr. Norton,
concerning many years ago, well, not so long ago, Freddie Kisu, who was dancing a different tune then, said that Barrett Jack Deere is an ideological racist. He's dancing a different tune now. But in light of the PPP's Congress and the fact that there is no African Guyanese on their top list in terms of influential persons within the PPP, do you still see, or do you see Jack Deere and the PPP being that ideological racist as Freddie Kissoon described them not so long ago? And in that court matter, Freddie Kissoon outlined, said, and I quote, 98% possession of land, commerce, financial houses, the import and export trade in general, wealth belong to Indo-Guyanese. That's Freddie Kissoon. What is your take? Again, I know you've mentioned, because many folks in the streets, whether in Guyana or outside of Guyana, view the PPP as a racist party. Thank you, sir.
I think Freddie should know what he's talking. I don't pay attention to Freddie for a long time. I believe if you're not a principled person, your writings will sway with the wind. And it surprised me that he went to the AFC and then he said his small parties and he finally arrived supporting PPP. But I wouldn't add much credence to anything that Freddie Kissoon says. But when you look at the practice of the PPP, you wouldn't consider them only ideologically racist. You will say that their actions are racist. And there is a lot of evidence to suggest that the PPP operates on a racial basis. Look at how they dealt with the squatters at Pigeon Island and how they deal with other squatters. Look at how they deal with issues involving the sugar union as against those with the GTUC, and you see who they are. So I don't think we need to belabel that. The United Nations engagement recently established well beyond doubt that the PPP is a racist political party.
Good morning. Living the back with cultural news. I just wanted to follow up very quickly on what Mr. Lowe said about the U.S. fighter jets, but I'd like to direct
About the what?
Jets.
US fighter jets. If that's okay, I'd like to direct my questions to Mr. Norton. So can you say what are your thoughts on U.S. fighter jets flying over Guyana? And can you say if the opposition was in tune or updated by the government with regard to any military exercises to boost their capacity amid the ongoing tensions with Venezuela? And secondly, sir, can you say what are your thoughts on the establishment of a U.S. military base here? There are some concerns that this may be a move to that direction.
All right, let me start with the flying over the jets. Like every other Guyanese, I read it in the news. And so I don't know what factors determine it. What I do know is that in foreign policy, every act that you would have taken has implications. And while there might be some positive elements to them flying over, there are negative elements which we also have to look at. So were I in the position, I would look hard and dealt with it slightly different. It's the first one. As it relates to U.S. military base, I do not know that a U.S. military base. But if the information is provided, I will be able to look at it and say what I do think. I believe that there are dangers in having a base. There are positives in having a base. We have to also cater for our neighbors, Brazil, who I know have concerns about military bases in this region, and they are critical to the support for Venezuela. So I would prefer to get all the data at my disposal and to address it and eke out what is Guyana's best interest. For me, the most important thing is to do whatever is done in the interest of Guyana. At this point of time, I'm not so sure that I have at my disposal all the data to pronounce on it. But generally, I will be inclined to have Guyana free of those activities if because we have a controversy with Venezuela, and we prefer all of these things to be dealt with within the realms of diplomacy rather than any form of military involvement.
And the second part of my question, I was asking whether the opposition is ensured or updated by government with regard to any form of military exercises being carried out.
I answered that first. I said no. I said no. I had no indication. The government has not engaged me on the Ghana-Venezuela territorial controversy on any other issue since we talked just before the Argyle declaration when I made certain positions clear.
I have another question, but it's off of the press statement. Ms. Higgins, can I go ahead as I have the floor?
Yes, you
Thank you. Sir, Exxon has revealed plans to further ramp up oil production at the Laser 2 project, even though it is already producing above the vessel's desired capacity. Is the opposition supportive of the company's plans?
We said earlier that we are not supportive of that approach, if I recall. Our position is we need to be very, very careful, look at every project separately, and to space it out. There are dangers involved if you're going above the limit. That is dangerous for the people of Guyana because any mishap that occurs will impact the Guyanese people negatively. Like we said, while we want investment, we want to see oil production, the interests of the people of Guyana must come first. And we should not be encouraging any company to go above the safety limit and endanger the people of Guyana. So I would have serious concerns if anything is being done that threatens that stability and safety that are needed for the people of Guyana.
We would also say that this underlines the need for a full parent company guarantee as well as appropriate oil spill insurance. Because if a company is going to be going beyond the nameplate capacity for the vessels that are producing oil, that raises the question of additional risks. Of course, if they're going to do that, it needs to be monitored closely. But definitely, you would need to have the appropriate coverage in the event that there is an oil spill.
Yeah, thank you. Now that we're off the press statement, Mr. Norton, are you concerned that weeks after the PPP, mainly Air Fanali came out publicly and spoke about the change of management at the Guyana Power and Light, and then it's still business as usual, rampant blackouts every single day, people are complaining, and nothing at all being done by the regime? And Mr. Lowe, what's happening with the $214 million that is missing? And lots of other money is missing by this regime. But yet, if Jagdev sits at his press conference and just chat about everybody else, but he doesn't want to hold himself accountable at all or answerable to the people about those allegations, serious allegations leveled against him, corruption against him by Sue and others. Talk to us about the $214 million, please. And finally, Mr. North, we know the PVP's press, Congress, so-called Congress, if you want to call it that, is gone. And we know that you have been saying that by August 31st, your party will have its Congress. It's getting closer to that date. Can you please give us an update?
Let me start with the last one first. I did say, I think in the last press conference I attended, that we did agree that by the 15th there will be a clear document, etc., outlining the position. And the 15th is not yet here. Now, as it relates to GPL, I expect that Air Fanali will do what he did. It's normal for them to, when a crisis occurs, appear to be taking action and then they took no action. I don't see them taking any action. The PPP, when they came to government, brought back a man who had failed at GPL. they now bring a family of the Attorney General. It is evident that they're not focusing on the qualification and competence that are needed to govern GPL. They are into their political cronyism. And whatever Irfan Ali says is just hot air. The PPP cannot work with professionals because they are corrupt, they're incompetent, and they are divisive. And those things cut across professionalism. And so I expected no better than the PPP making pronouncements and then do nothing about it. Just like Jack, we will investigate the killings, the disturbances, call it what you want, and then he forgets it. If you go back through the history of Barra Jack, you know that he just makes pronouncements, and when it comes to serious policy decisions, you get none. So it is normal for Irfan to do what. The fact that they had to perform all these antics at the Congress to distract people from the real substance, and the Congress didn't discuss the issues of national importance, is indicative of their mindset and how they approach things. One cannot expect anything serious from them.
Mark, on the issue of management as well, Jack, you said something that nearly made me fall through the floor. He said that with this power ship, they will now be able to service the various GPL generators that have been running. And he's saying this as if it's news to him that you have to service generators in order for them to function properly. The management of GPL by the government really is something that has concerned us. And we've been talking about getting additional capacity because we know that these generators have been running full stretch, and that is, you can't maintain generators if they're running all the time. The government has now announced that they're looking for additional capacity, so they've listened finally to what we were saying, even though this is so late and Guyanese have had to suffer through so much blackout. But we must also express concern because we know that the next thing they want to come with is to raise people's electricity bills to pay for this additional capacity. We have gotten them to commit that they're not going to do that, but we must remain, citizens must remain vigilant, because that would easily be something that they'll try to slip past the average Guyanese. On the topic of the audit, now you may have heard me speak a little bit earlier regarding an inflated cost from $4 million to $12 billion. Really, Mark, it is a perfect indication of the government's attitude towards accountability and audits. That what is possible that it was just somebody accidentally entered in 12 billion instead of 4 million. Because I don't think any serious person would do that intentionally. That is where the government is fully in support of GRA. But when it comes to something like the GRA saying that it needs to be able to pay its staffers very high wages in order to retain them, silence. When it comes to actually carrying out audits, we have to say all sorts of things to get them to audit. And then to get audits released, it's nearly impossible. And then to get the proper type of audit, it's a fight again. That shows me that, he thinks that just by pushing on issues that are not issues that have the teeth, he can establish some credibility. But the real issues, and you're mentioning a very real issue, which is the $214 million dispute that we've got with the operator, which the PPP tried to reduce down to $3 million, costing the Guyanese people so much money that they would otherwise have gotten. That is buried. That you're not hearing about, but something which is possibly just an error with somebody typed in a wrong key. In the financial industry, we call those errors. We have a specific name for those types of errors. That is where he's full of energy and enthusiasm. It just demonstrates the hypocrisy that the PPP has when it comes to accountability in the oil and gas sector.
Sorry, Madam Moderator, and this will be my final question, unless Madam Harris beats me to it. Mr. Norton, there are some serious allegations leveled against the operations of the Guyana Chronicle and other state-run media entities, but mainly the Chronicle in terms of its book not being audited and also racial discrimination being the order of the day at the Guyana Chronicle. Can you pronounce on that and to say whether you support publicly the auditing of the books of the Guyana Chronicle?
All public companies' books should be audited. It's not specific to Ghana problem. First thing. Second thing I'd say is this. Complaints have come to us and we will investigate them and then pronounce on them. But we see it as part of the trend of the government. The government practices racism. And if it will be difficult for one entity within the government not to practice racism. And then when you put persons who are not professional to manage those institutions, then you'll expect heavy political involvement. So it sounds logical to me. We will investigate and we will take our positions on them. But it's not restricted to the Ghana Chronicle. It is also includes NCN. I mean, I can give you an example. I was invited to domino competition in Linden, and of course I'm a Linden, and people came engaging me, etc. And there was NCN taking pictures. Of course, they didn't find a bad one, so they didn't put out any. So the misuse of it is normal. And I'm not here blaming the young cameramen. They are doing the job that they have to do. But then when you got to go to something like somebody like Kwame McCoy, then you will expect political involvement, no professionalism, and the kind of things that.
Ms. Crystal Youngo, I have one follow-up to what Mr. Norton said.
Crystal Young with Pension News, ma'am. Can you provide a comment on the GTU's resumption of the teachers' strike countrywide in light of the government's failure to engage in collective bargaining?
We will support the Ghana Teachers Union. We've always been in support of Ghana Teachers Union. We believe the government is callous. We believe that we have committed ourselves to collective bargaining moving forward, and we believe the government should be involved in collective bargaining. And we believe, look, sugar workers came out on strike for whatever they came out. I too. But the government intervened and dealt with that and solved it. But when it comes to the teachers, the government isn't prepared to do that. So again, you see the bias. We support the strike. We will do everything to ensure it succeeds. And whatever the teachers decide, we will engage with them and support them as they try to get a better standard of living for teachers in this country.
It's also, I think, really vital for us to point out that the government, in the skit that they carried out at their Congress, where they openly mocked teachers, has demonstrated that it has no interest in teachers and their welfare, but rather is interested in disrespecting them. Many Guyanese have registered their disgust at those actions. And really, I think this has just bolstered support for the teachers as they look to get reasonable compensation. It, to me, is beyond belief that any political group would carry out such an awful mockery of really public servants, of people who are dedicated to helping the nation's children. That was disgusting. And I think it will harden people's resolve to support the teachers and harden the teachers' resolve to get what it is that they are duly entitled to.
I'll take Ms. Newman's your question, and then I'll take Mr. Adam.
Mr. Norton, coming back to your remarks regarding the Guyana Chronicle in specific, coming back to your remarks about the Guyana Chronicle, you just mentioned that you receive complaints regarding discrimination. But I find it very disturbing to make such vague comments, especially conveniently when this question was raised. Could you say what complaints that you've received regarding discrimination at the Guyana Chronicle?
Many workers, not only in the Chronicle, all across this country, quietly message you and tell you what is happening. How is it you think we knew that the PPP was going to tell the police not to wear uniform and put policemen to guard the delegates at Enterprise and at Goyam Hall? It is ordinary policemen who would call you or message you and say, this is happening. Similarly, workers at Chronicle, workers at NCN, many of them will tell you, and even when you look at them when they're doing their work, you know they are under duress. you know it is not a free bill. I think many of those workers at Chronicle, at NCN, given the opportunity, will ask the hard questions to Barra Jack Dale, but they are not allowed to. And so we are clear, we are aware that they are placed under tremendous pressure. We know the government rules by fear, that a PPP person could be saying, if you don't buy we hot dog, we can take you off of it. It's a manifestation of the culture. And it goes right down into every institution. And so Chronicle will not be spared. GPI will not be spared. You name it. Just look and see how they attempt to humiliate and destroy every journalist who asks questions. Look at the experience that Gordon Mosley had. So it's not rocket science. The general behavior. Look at Irfan Ali's talk to public servants, how he addresses them as if they are children, as if they have no professional worth. And you have a clear indication of what happens at the various levels in the society. The PPP has manifested a level of callousness that permeates every state organization in the country.
Chronicle spared under the APNU AFC government?
What
Was the Ghana Chronicle spared under the APNU AFC government? You just said that no state entity, Ghana Chronicle, is not spared under the current government.
But you didn't say, I know what I said, spared of. You tell me spared of what?
You said they were
under the AP and UAFC. I know of no Chronicle worker under GS. I know Chronicle under the AP and UAFC produced an article which was not true about me. And I know that it didn't come from directives. And so I don't think there should be any comparison between the two. If you go back to the Ghana Chronicle under us, you will see Jack Doe and them featured in the budget, what they said, etc., in a good light, not just taking the negative. I invite you to show me where the Chronicle produces anything positive verbatim about the APNU AFC. And the comparison between us in government and the PPP government, no comparison. The PPP has mutilated the state media. The PPP has shown that they're not even willing to tolerate a little bit of, we call it, I would say this. Show me one journalist from the Chronicle or from the state media who can ask a question that is unacceptable to the PPP. I will provide a question and let them ask it.
Yes, thank you. Quickly, I want to say that I was at one time in Chronicle on the PPP, on the PNC, sorry. And I can direct you to reporters who worked with me. I know that it was the largest selling newspaper in the country. I know one time said to me, post 1992 elections, when I signed and Gail said to me, Adam, I hope you don't do anything stupid and leave. The reporters who me all about can be approached. They are in many corners of the world. So I don't know that anybody could complain that the Chronicle was discriminatory. We put a man Passage all the time to publish his articles. And I did. The archives are there and that can be found. That's the part though.
No, but Adam, before you go forward, when MPs and so send letters to the Chronicle from the opposition, they don't publish it.
But that happened, right?
No, I'm talking about now.
All right. Just you were monitoring the GPL situation as it relates to publishing. I got information that this ship should have been on stream on the 8th of May. That would make it, what, 2 days ago? The evening of the 8th, they couldn't get it started. And it hasn't started as yet. It's not generating anything. Are you in a position to monitor more of what's going on here? They got to employ someone to get it started.
We are receiving information on what is happening. From what we are hearing, it's not likely to be up and running shortly. Apparently, there were no tests of it prior to its coming, and it was just one of these off of the hip shooting type event. And so now they are discerning what is the reality with the boat. So we will continue to monitor it. People provide us with information, just like how we had said to them that the generators that they imported weren't working and that they were old generators, and they took some of them out of box in Honduras, etc. All of that information we had. We continue to get information, and we will say to the public as is possible. But it is one of the areas the government will not be able to hide because it manifests itself in blackouts.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. In fact, as we continue to monitor this power shift closely, we are indeed concerned by the fact that earlier this year there were reports that Cuba, which is where the power shift came from, was receiving terrible blackouts. So that to me does raise an alarm and means that we have to have additional scrutiny of what is going on here, as we're going to be with this ship, it would appear, for 2 years.
Adam, look, I was never optimistic. Everything that Barajagio touches fails. Skeleton, fail. Fiber optic cable, fail. Enmore packaging, fail. You name the project. The man is a complete failure. I don't know what experience he's talking about. Failed experience? The man is a complete failure. And from the time he is commenting and dealing with it, you know that it is not likely to succeed. Nothing the man touches succeeds, at least at the public level. I don't know about privately.
Adam, he only now is aware that generators need maintenance. He's only now aware.
I'll take my final question from Mr. Mark.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. And I do apologize. I said several times that it was my final question, but this is indeed my final question. Returning to the Chronicle and other state media, Mr. Norton, oftentimes Mr. Ali and Jack Dave, they love to talk about freedom. Serious allegations of those entities, mainly the Chronicle and the NCF, that there's really no press freedom, and that reporters are being forced to carry a government line. And if they don't carry that government line, they can either walk, they're fired, they're being discriminated, serious racial discrimination. Outside of that, hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money being spent on Chronicle that doesn't sell. Chronicle is the lowest selling newspaper in the history of Guyana right now. What is your take on what those racial discrimination and wasting of taxpayers' money on Chronicle and others?
I've already dealt with racial discrimination, but I want to ask Chronicle and DPI and NCN to do something. Let them send a journalist without a phone, and let them ask questions as they see fit. And then we'll have an idea as to where it is headed. We are well informed that Kwame has a crew that sends messages to journalists, and they have to ask those questions. So there's no illusion about press freedom here in Ghana. There isn't any press freedom. There can be no illusion. The question of racial discrimination permeates every aspect of the government structure. And so I do not expect Chronicle to be free of it. What I can say to you, I can do what we did with some other institution, ask the Auditor General to audit them and see what he does.
You'll also observe, Mark, that last year on the World Press Freedom Index, Guyana dropped 26 places. And this, of course, resulted in a tirade by Jack Dewey. He attacked the Press Association and so on, which I could be wrong, I could be misinterpreting this, but it seems to me that that will only cause there to be more concerns around press freedom. So this has been something that has been reported even internationally as far as concerns around press freedom are go.
We want to thank all the members of the press who would have joined today's press conference, and of course our viewing audience. And
yeah, my name is Jasmine Caldata, Francis C. Wicknam, and since 1965, I become a voter. And I always place my ex next to the cup. And what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data.
Oh, Jesus Christ, if cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You gotta give a $40,000 for buy good ration. You gotta get 3 man now. A weekend man, a monthly man, and a fortnight man.
If you don't want your because we're excited to see you here. We're coming. Hold on. You got the roti? You got to be kidding me. You got the roti, don't worry. See, you used to make roti when he was 5. But let me see if you can clap. You got shake now. You got shake. Shake now. Shake it in. This is the all right.
This is the modern way.
Okay. Look, sweetheart, this is it. All right. Let's show you shake it. Farmer Steve Rose.
Take responsibility. Yep. We want you to look out for us. We do not want no segregation. No. We are one people. And if we're going to do it, let's do it together. Because we have respect for you.
How we gonna do a body man walk right now? You ready? Fuck yeah, let me go now. Hear me sing now. Body walk, body walk, body walk, everything. Body walk, truck, body walk, body walk, body walk, everything. Body. Listen.